Well, welcome. Here we are. This time of year, we're going to meet two people who, once again, as we've talked about the other boards, stood up and said they will help make Milford better. You know, it's so easy. You see a pothole, you know who to blame. You don't see a pothole, you still know who to blame. If the snow comes down too hard, you know who to blame. You know, and this highway surveyor role has always been an interesting one, because the only time you think of the highway surveyor, it's kind of like an IT position. As long as everything's working, you never think of them. And then all of a sudden, when it isn't working, boy, do you know who to think about. So let's start tonight with introductions.
I'm Scott Crisafoli. I'm the present highway surveyor. I'm up for re-election and been there for 13 years as highway surveyor.
And I'm Jamie Lucchini. I'm also running for highway surveyor in Milford, previous employee of the town of Milford Highway Department for 15 plus years, and current highway superintendent in the town of Northbridge.
Why don't we start with the same question I always start with? What a surprise. Scotty, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I'm a committed employee of the town. I've been here 30 years, 13 as a highway surveyor. Spent most of my life working for the town of Milford. I've always been committed to the safety and the services for the residents in the town. Services come with a price, but we've given them the best possible services we can at the lowest price we possibly can. Just my overall commitment to the job and to the residents and everything we do at the highway department as far as safety and basically, I'm not looking for a job, I'm actually doing the job.
Jamie, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I am a lifelong Milford resident. I am been on the Vernon Grove Board of Trustees now for 12 years, chairman 8. I volunteer in many different organizations in Milford. I also am a former worker in Milford, and I came up through the ranks at the highway department. And about 6 years ago, I realized that, you know, I'd hit a glass ceiling. There was no more advancement for me there, and I wanted to advance my career in that field. So I went out and applied a few places and got offered a few jobs and took the highway superintendent in Northbridge job. Currently, I'm in charge of many miles of road, 92 miles of road, 25 miles of sidewalk. I'm in charge of 8 municipal buildings, from janitorial through construction, 14 cemeteries, 8 ball fields, and it keeps going. And I'd like to take all the knowledge that I have accumulated in that capacity and bring that to Milford, along with the credentials that I now have, as well as having my construction supervisor's license and being a Massachusetts certified public procurement official.
So now, you have parks?
Yes.
We don't have parks.
Parks is a separate division.
Right. So you're not just highway? How does that work?
No, it's a DPW. So under me, I am the highway grounds and facilities manager. So I have, like I said, roads and sidewalks. I'm also by contract the deputy tree warden in town. I manage the street lights and traffic lights. Like I said, I'm in charge of 8 town buildings, janitorial through construction. Parks, we have 8 ball fields I'm in charge of, as well as, 3 town commons. So we mow about 122 acres a week on top of the road work and construction. And it's structured a little bit differently, but it exposed me to a lot of different things that I never would have been privy to if I had stayed in my current capacity in Milford.
So how does that differ from what we do?
Well, we're elected officials in each department. So you have cemetery board, you have elected parks commissioners, elected sewer commissioners, and the highway surveyor, which runs the highway. The highway surveyor itself is a position of, I like to call it a DPW director of one department, because that's basically a role. The role of the highway surveyor years ago when I started was a much minor role. It was a smaller department, less going on, less money, smaller budget, no stormwater management. Over the years, the department has grown to the point where the highway surveyor is really administrative 100%, to the point where we actually have a highway superintendent on staff that takes care of most of the everyday operations out on the street. So the highway surveyor position is more of, you know, budgeting, bid work, writing specs for jobs we do, stormwater management, 100%. That is 90% of the job today, between the highway surveyor and engineering department. Bid work and grants, writing grants is huge. Millions of dollars in grants have been written in the last 13 years by me. The amount of money that we're able to save taxpayers between tip projects and grants is millions and millions of dollars. That's time-consuming stuff. I'm on the road every day. I'm out there every day, always overseeing what's going on. Because you got to know, obviously what everyone else is doing. I give out the work to the highway superintendent. He gets the work done. So it's kind of a step-down system now. And it was never like that. But the work and the amount of work we're doing and the job itself is so much larger than it's ever been. We do everything from drainage to the roads to the stormwater. Speccing out equipment is part of what we got to do, and building management, our own building. We take care of all the grounds, basically, not the fields. Parking lots, roadways, sidewalks, ADA compliance, on all the schools, all the parking lots, all the buildings throughout town. So we do all, it's just a huge, overwhelming thing that's just, takes a lot of experience. It really does. I've been lucky enough to come up through those ranks and see it from the bottom to the top and understand it and be able to do this job for 13 years and really have a grip on what needs to be done.
So now, what do you see, I guess this question goes to you first, what do you see as the three biggest challenges the highway department is going to face?
The biggest challenge is stormwater. The MS4 compliance is a giant thing. I know we've talked about it a million times. I've talked about it on
every
the
time
show.
you come, so isn't the budget for it.
Well, it's a huge budget thing. We are in the second year of the Phase 2 permit, and we're in a planning and design stage, which can be very, very time-consuming, but yet very important, because we're looking at 6 to 20 years of about $44 million we have to spend. So what we do in these 5 years is very, very important for our overall plan, because we need to remove phosphorus. We need to remove 1,200 pounds of phosphorus a year out of our stormwater, basically. That's what we're looking at. And the planning that goes into it and the compliance parts that we have to do is very big. And working with the town and the selectmen and the finance committee and actually building a plan for the last 7 years that we are working towards and work in the middle of working on, actually, is it's been a long process. And what we're going to do going forward is even larger. So
Let's stop there with the first challenge, because I think we're going to get buried if we go three at once. What's the biggest challenge you see the highway department facing?
Well, I do concur stormwater is a huge issue. It's, the 500-pound elephant in the room. I have a lot of experience with it. I'm a member of the Central Mass Stormwater Coalition, which is 31 other communities as well as Northbridge. And we pool all of our resources. So for about $4,000 a year, we have access to what every 31 other town has. As far as this year, the only thing that was due was the notice of intent, so we pooled all of our resources to get that out there. Right now, we're still in the waiting stages, much like the rest of Massachusetts, that we just don't know what the permit is yet. It's still hung up in courts. It will be a huge issue when it breaks, but there's nothing that has been confirmed yet of any validity, except that the notice of intent was due, which is basically a plan to outline where you're going to go next. Monitor your catch basin cleanings, your street sweepings. It's still hung up in the court, so there's really no definitive answer on the stormwater. So that will be a huge thing when it is finalized. As far as what I see in Milford, some of the biggest challenges is you have such a large...
Well, hold on, before you go on to challenge 2 and 3. You're talking $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember right, it was $400,000 in this year's budget.
400.
Right? So how come he's doing 4,000 and we're doing 400,000?
We are on the Charles River. It is impeded waterway, and we have to comply with what the EPA says. We have been told to go forward. I don't know about any surrounding towns, but the town of Milford has been told to go forward with your stormwater. So we did a notice of intent 2 years ago, and we did a stormwater plan last July. So now we're in the first 5 years of that plan. And part of that plan is non-structural BMPs, which is education, water testing, all these different things we have to do. The other part of that 5-year plan is design work. Now, we have to start designing structural BMPs for years 6 through 20. This is all set in stone. I don't know of anything that's ever said, don't do this. We need to be ready to do this. And it's a mandate. It has to be done. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. As far as I know, we have not been told to stop. So we are continuing forward. The town of Franklin, we work closely with in Stormwater. We have been together with them in 319 grant we got to look at, working together as towns and sharing stuff. And there is some things we will be doing, but overall, most of the stuff we do has to be, specific per town. And so
We can't just give the Charles River to the next town over?
we would like to,
I
but
was
we
gonna
are.
say, wait a minute, if it's 400,000 a year, let's give it to the next
It's
town
not,
over.
it's not the 400,000 a year, it's the first 5 years, which could be $1.5 million. And we have raised 800,000 to get to this point. And going forward, it's gonna be lessened as we go. That's the way we set it up, that's the way the town set it up with the finance committee. So we set it up 400, 400, 200, 200, 200. That was the original plan. Because we knew at the beginning we would need the larger amount of money, and we go from there. At the end, what it costs, the more design we can do now is the less we're gonna do years 6 through 20. So we need to stay ahead of it, but not necessarily be the groundbreakers on everything. I know the town of Franklin is already looking at utilities and taxing the public on stormwater. We're not quite there yet, but this is something we need to plan for, absolutely.
Taxing on stormwater?
Basically like a sewer tax where you would tax for your rainwater.
Oh, that was that guy that came in. I remember him saying, he did a presentation to us at the FinCom, that he could pay for stormwater without taxing. And he said it was a fee.
It's a fee, not a tax. I shouldn't say tax, it is a fee.
But wait a minute, Scotty, there was the guy I looked at, I said, excuse me, sir, I feel your hand going in my pocket.
Yeah,
You can call it a fee, but if you're taking money out of my pocket,
feels like a
it
tax.
feels like a tax.
Yeah.
Jamie, any further comments on this before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, as far as stormwater goes, I know as of now, Milford's put away $800,000 in stormwater, and as of today, they've spent $53,000, going back to the town meeting back in October of 18 and October of 19. And I just don't know at this time, considering with all the other challenges Milford is facing right now, if we have to earmark money that we're not positive where it has to be directed yet. And I mean, this goes back to the time when Milford, this was about, probably 10 years ago, we rushed and bought a regenerative air sweeper because that was going to be part of stormwater. And lo and behold, that got thrown out of the whole thing, so we ended up with a regenerative air street sweeper that we didn't need for stormwater. So I mean, I just don't think we're better off suited as far as a town goes or municipality, to be the trendsetters, because the state has a nasty way of changing their mind all the time. They do. And this stormwater thing has changed so many times in the last dozen years that I just don't have any confidence that it's not going to change again before everything's finalized. Above and beyond the notice of intent, which is your plan for the next 5 years to prove you're sweeping, cleaning catch basins, lowering the amount of sand you're using to bring nitrogen and phosphorus out of the catch basins in the environment. That's where we're at now. And that, I know that it's coming up, but I feel money could be better allocated for things in the present that we're looking at. Downtown cleanup of the parking lots that are dirty. There's so many other things, or even out of the highway department, other departments as the school or anybody else. We're all part of the same piece of the pie. And right now, when you don't have to allocate that funds, it'd be nice to use that someplace else where it is desperately needed right now.
Okay, so the second biggest challenge.
I feel the second biggest challenge in this town is always the traffic. Now, I know that doesn't have a huge amount to do with the highway department, but I feel it does. Because we have traffic issues in Milford. There's no secret there. It's tough to get from one side of the town to the other. So you compound that in construction season, now you have road construction taking large chunks of time and adding to the delays of the traffic. One thing that I am fortunate that I have done in Northbridge is my roads program is all incorporative, so I deal with one company. They deal with their own supers. I have built-in time limits inside those contracts. And I mean, I know things pop up, weather, situations. Once you put a shovel in the ground, you never know what you're getting into. It happens all the time. I mean, we removed rails out on Main Street in Northbridge, and I had sleepless nights because once you start ripping up rails that have been under the ground for all those years, you don't know what you're getting into. But built into the contract, I have time constraints. So that way, when my roads are opened up in week 1, most of the time they're buttoned up and paved by week 3, at latest week 4. And that is a huge issue, I think, in Milford, because if we can minimize the amount of time that we're doing road construction and hindering people that are commuting more than it already is, I think that is a huge issue in this town.
Scotty, your second biggest challenge.
Well, it's always money, but I'm gonna talk about the highway department itself.
Because we gave you too much money and not enough to spend?
No. Road money, there's not enough road money, but that's a different challenge. But let's talk about the highway department itself. We have a building that's sitting in a floodplain. We have fuel tanks sitting feet off the Charles River. We are in a vulnerable area. It's been noted. We've done vulnerability studies, and that building itself is sitting in a bad area. My main concern with that is the fuel tanks right now. The probability is probably low of something major happening, but it could happen. We have 2 dams upstream. If those dams ever broke, that whole building, that whole area is going to be flooded. We are sitting in a floodplain. I think the future, we should start thinking about that. We need to start working on that. We need to know that that's going to be okay, because in any disaster, you will need the highway department. You will need equipment, and we can't have it underwater. And we definitely can't have tanks floating down the stream. So I look at that as one of my top 3 items as far as, we need to think about that. We need to get on start figuring out what we're going to do with that. I've tried to get a grant for a study to just, see what we're going to do, a feasibility study. Should we raise the building? Should we take it out of the floodplain? Should we take the tanks out, move those to another location in town? It's an unseen thing that people aren't paying attention to, but being down there and seeing that Charles River a foot from overflowing before is a very scary situation. And to know that we could have 2 10,000-gallon fuel tanks down the end of the river and heading to Boston is not going to be a good thing. So I would like to see a process of some sort start going forward to start thinking about this at least. Let's start, figuring out what we're going to do with that and how we're going to deal with it. Whether, like I said, whether we make it secure so the bankings of that river cannot overflow and keep the building where it is, or we move the building to higher ground. Something needs to
And I want to go over the building. I could do it now, or, okay. What's your thoughts on the building?
My thoughts, well, since I've been in Northbridge, I've been fortunate enough once again they've been trying for about 40 years out there, and I was fortunate enough to get the funding and go through the construction of a brand new $2.5 million garage at the highway department for all of our vehicles, because the vehicles out there were always stored outside, and it was a complete nightmare when it would snow.
Sounds familiar.
So we had no indoor storage at all, so we went out and got the taxpayers to back us and put up a $2.5 million garage, which is right on the cusp of the floodplain, because much like every other department, they put everything up next to the rivers. We're right on the banks of the Milford River, which is a flood zone. So we have very similar issues, and we had to deal with this. I had to deal with this with the engineers and figuring out the design to put it right outside the floodplain area. So I think where the highway department is in Milford right now is a perfect central location, and that was one of the driving forces why we ended up keeping it in Northbridge. Same reason. We're downtown. That way the sidewalk tractors go out, they're right where they have to be. Our salt storage is there. We're down by all the schools, down by everything that we have to take care of. So the central location, even though it was within a floodplain, was deemed the best location. Now, we did have underground tanks. We had an above ground tank. We ended up replacing that with another above ground tank. But we facilitate a fueling station outside. We contract that out to Peterson Oil, so that way when we need fuel for the vehicles, we go fuel up the vehicles there. We have a very small 500-gallon emergency storage tank that if in the middle of the night they're closed, or if there's a blizzard, we can get through a couple of days on that diesel and gas that we have to get through. So we've conquered some of those challenges facing the Milford complex, and I think where it is a perfect location for the highway department, having worked there. And I think if we look back at the plan to purchase some of the other property, at least some of the other property that's already down there, we could accommodate the Parks Department, even the Cemetery Division. There's plenty of room down there with what is now the Pintos building. That way we could have a gated off section, and it would be basically a public works complex for the parks, highway, cemetery, and have everything centrally located right there. The building needs work. The highway department, it definitely needs some upgrades. It has some, I know it has some leaky roofs. I know that from being there. There's some door issues. But I don't think it's anything that we have to go out and look at a huge complex someplace else. I really feel we can get everything we need right there with the land available and the space available.
Scotty, the building, the location. If you had the magic wand, what would you do?
As far as location?
No, just as far as everything to do with the highway department down there. Would you move it? Would you move the tanks? What would you do?
That's why I'm saying the feasibility study, to actually study it and see what's the best approach for the town, money-wise and everything else. But I picture a building, that is housing everything we do in this town. But I also see a central maintenance division. Maintenance is huge. The amount of equipment that we house down there, I think we have 37 pieces of equipment. The maintenance on those vehicles is nonstop. The essential maintenance division where we could actually maintain all vehicles in town, whether it be fire department, police department, parks department, everything, right in one main location. So our vehicles don't have to go out to private companies, and we don't have to spend $150, $200 an hour on some diesel vehicles to get worked on. We can do it in-house. Why not take care of all the town equipment? Why send everything out and spend more money? So I'd see that as part of that facility, whether it's down there or it's somewhere else. I think that's very important. A lot of towns are doing that. But yes, it should house all departments, absolutely. Whether we're DPW or not or whatever, it should house all departments, a central unit, central location. Like I said, whether it's on that piece of property, buying the property next door, or moving the whole system. But that's what a feasibility study would figure out for us.
Is it feasible in your mind just to move the tanks?
Right now it is, yes, absolutely. I don't think we should be taking that chance. We know that could be an issue. That has definitely been brought up as an issue in some of the studies we've had to do. So to move forward, I think would be the smartest thing to do is to move those tanks. Now, like I said, whether we move them a higher ground on that same location, it would be nice to have them on the same location. Portable tanks, above ground tanks, not in the ground. Get away from some of that DEP, stuff that they make you do and take care of the tanks, and it's a lot of work with DEP. It's constant. So that would be number one, and that could cost money too. I mean, it's not going to be cheap. We can't leave the tanks in the ground. We have to pull them out. Above ground tanks going to cost us $1 million, no matter which way we look at it. So we want to make sure we're doing the right thing and put it in the right place.
We stopped you before you got on. The next one is yours. Third largest challenge.
Well, right now the Highway Department is going through a transition with the Board of Health. We will be taking over the transfer station. It's in the works. The Board of Health has decided that since we do all the work there and all they do is the paperwork, that why not give it to the Highway Department, let them deal with it. And, use your equipment, do what you guys do. We're always down there plowing, fixing, squishing dumpsters, moving dumpsters. I mean, it's constant. We took the brush, we took the leaves. We're dealing with that. We're composting. We're making bark mulch. We're doing everything we need to do to recycle all that product now rather than pay to get rid of it. So the next step is to take the transfer station and start doing what we can do there. Somehow, with our equipment, our trucking, we can take care of a lot of that stuff. So ultimately, I would like to work towards a transfer station that is self-contained. And I see it at Asylum Street, our Asylum Street dump site. And it's a huge challenge to do this, and it's going to take a few years. And we're in the process of looking at it and laying out the land, and we're putting a new road in now just for the leaf dump itself. And to make it more of a recycling place where you can go dump your glass into a container. You can dump your cardboard in a separate container and separate everything. So there's actually more value to it that way than dump it in a dumpster and now it's got to be sorted, there's no value. Everybody knows that recycling costs more than dumping trash. It's not even close. So let's make it so we can make the money on that material rather than just dumping it and spending twice the price. Because the Highway Department is set up the way it is, we have the equipment to do it. We have the trucks to pull the trailers. We have the dumpster trucks to move the dumpsters. We can do all that. And I think it's more feasible for the town. There's probably more profit to be made. Even just doing the leaves alone and the composting, we have saved the town thousands and thousands of dollars. And we are actually making a material that we are using. We are making loam. Pay $20 to $22 a yard for loam, or make it for $3 to $4 a yard. We've been making it. We're making it out of your leaves. So recycling has been a huge part of what we do. That was a huge focus on mine when I first started this position. Recycle all materials, raw materials, gravel, compost, and it's working out great. So there's been huge savings. So any way we can recycle it, in my eyes, including the transfer station, is definitely a challenge that we should be doing as a town.
Jamie, third biggest challenge you think we'd face?
I think the third biggest challenge, I'm going to scale it back a little bit, is the LEAF program itself. I think it's a fantastic program to offer taxpayers. We do a LEAF program in Northbridge, which is different, but as far as the LEAF program that goes in Milford, I think it has to be changed. It hasn't been structurally changed since it was implemented 15 years ago, 16 years ago. It hasn't changed. So I would like to take a look at the LEAF program, as well as the street sweeping, as well as pothole repair and all that, incorporate that into one house. And that house to me is turning a 40-hour operating department into a 50-hour operating department with a zero increase to the overall operating budget of the highway department. And yeah, you're looking at me kind of funny. Basically what that means is the operations of the highway department now are 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. It's 40 hours a week. A lot of other towns, surrounding towns, in the summer months, especially during construction season, they work 4 10-hour days. So instead of working Monday through Friday, they might work Monday through Thursday. It's 40 hours of operating time. Milford has a big enough department, I feel, that we could have on a rotating schedule 5 10-hour days. So we would basically be increasing the operations of the highway department from 40 hours to 50 hours a week. What that means is that street sweep is now not going to be out for 8 hours a day, which in actuality is 6, because I used to run it myself, because by the time you get to where you got to go wash, you have your break times. Instead of it being 6 hours, now it's going to be sweeping for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's 40 hours on that machine as opposed to the 30 it was getting before. Your road crews are out there fixing potholes for 50 hours a week as opposed to 40 hours a week. Then we fast forward into the LEAF program season, which I know is weather dependent and it gets tough. But now you're running those LEAF machines 8 hours a day. Under my system, you'd be running them at 10 hours a day before you even start talking about overtime. So that's 10 more machine hours out there of those LEAF machines every week during the LEAF season before you're tapping into any other extra time. To me, that is I'm trying to get the best bang out of the buck for our taxpayers in Milford, and I think this is a simple fix. We did something very similar at Vernon Grove Cemetery years ago. Change the hours of operation to stretch them out to 52 weeks as opposed to 40, if you remember getting them off the unemployment and all that. So I've done something very similar there. This is just a greater scale, and I think the turnaround on what you could produce for those extra 10 hours a day it's unbelievable how quick you can get through things.
But help me with the math.
Sure.
You got 15 people
15 people.
working 5 days a week.
Yes.
40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get 15 people working 50 hours a week?
Well, what you would be doing, what I'm proposing is through collective bargaining. I know there's union issues here, but I was a past union steward for 10 years too, so I've been on both sides of the table. If you look at other towns, and we've asked this years and years ago to do a 4 10-hour work week. Well, with the amount of manpower we have in Milford, if you take out of those 15 people, you take 3 people off on Monday, 3 people off on Tuesday, 3 people off on Wednesday, and so forth throughout the week. You have your core group of 12 people there every day working 10 hours a day. So now, instead of doing the typical 4 10-hour days where one day's off, you have someone there Monday through Fridays, say the hours are 6:30 to 4:30. And that comes in huge during road construction season, because I know Milford right now hauls its own materials when they're reclaiming roads. Well, those construction companies, those road companies work till at least 5 o'clock every day. So I know, I was in those trucks. I was there from 3 to 5 o'clock getting overtime every day, where there'd already be people in those trucks at a zero increase because you're not into the overtime yet. And you would still have a full complement of people for the 5 days a week to operate. Now I know that would have to stop in the winter because, once you get after the leaf season, now you're fighting winter season, and that's a different animal. But I really think this is a program that could work for Milford with the amount of people we have there and the amount of support we have from the town. I think this would really be a great give back to them.
Scotty.
I
How do you
can't
think-
agree with that. The reason being is because of how busy we are. We have 3 crews running every day. We cannot afford to cut down 1 crew. Not only that, we hire anywhere from 6 to 10 part-time employees all summer to help with this. To cut back on the amount of employees we have per day just would never work. You know, we're too busy and too big. We can't do it. I mean, I don't see it happen. I don't see that there's any benefit to it. We have an overtime budget. It's very well controlled. We plan projects around our overtime if I have to. It's never been an issue. We've never gone over our overtime. There is no reason to really do this. We have talked about it. We've actually sat down as a department and talked about it to try to figure out if it would work for us. But we're at the point now that we have enough employees to have our 3 crews. We have a construction crew, a paving crew, and we have a crew that just messes around and does all the small stuff, the pothole patching and the trash pickup and the brush cutting.
Boy, are you in trouble when that crew says, what do you mean we mess around?
But then, and the other problem is they do vacation time. Summer's vacation time. So you may hope you have, well, we'd have 7 guys. We hope we do. We might have 2. So it completely would wipe us out. It's just, it doesn't work for us. We are that busy in the department. We take on a lot of construction. We take on a lot of projects with other departments, school departments. You know, we've done parking lot work at Memorial School. We did a $40,000 project that they were going to spend $40,000 on. You know, we have the equipment and the manpower to do it. We're going to be there working and doing it. We're going to save the town $40,000. I can't do that if we don't have the personnel on the ground. I understand, you know, getting to 10 hours, but anybody knows this town, at 3 o'clock, you cannot move. So trucks cannot drive from A to B. You know, guys can't get from the barn to the job. They can't pick up stone. You can't go to, you know, pick up a load of stone across town. You're not going to make it. So it would actually defeat the purpose. That last 2 hours of the day would be very difficult for us. I mean, we know that. Come 3 o'clock, we're done. We can't do anything else. The traffic would kill us. Yes, we do some reclamation. Yes, we do haul our own materials. We have a trailer truck, so that holds, you know, more than three of the 6 wheels. So it's 1 guy working. It's not a lot of overtime. You know, sometimes the equipment we buy, and you know this when I say it to the FinCom, we buy it to save money, and that's the bottom line. There's, you know, by taking away half a crew each day it's defeating the purpose of what we do.
Jamie, one of the things people don't understand, and I remember it was somebody more than a decade and a half ago, made me think of snow in a whole different light. Because I always thought of how cute and fluffy it is, and then I found out what we pay to remove per inch of snow. And now every time that dang weatherman comes on, I go, there goes another 50 grand. But explain to me how we take care of snow and what it costs to remove snow, and what we could do to be more efficient and save money removing snow.
Well, what I've done in Northbridge, I mean, every town does it basically the same way. I'm not going to go through the whole operation. First you go out and salt, and then, you know, depending, once you get your 2 inches, you start plowing. I think it's at that point that is where your money savings can come in. My opinion is you get more outside contractors, because the more bodies you throw out there to plow streets, I don't care if you have 10 guys working it for 20 hours or you have 20 guys working for 10 hours. It's the same amount of money, but it's done in 10 hours as opposed to 20. So to me, to get the town back on its feet, get school running, get everything open, you put more contractors out into it. Now, by hiring contractors, you save, in my opinion, on overhead, on wear and tear of your vehicles. I mean, we have plenty of equipment in Milford that's, you know, it falls, every snowstorm, trucks break, it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. It's the nature of the beast. But when you're throwing more contractors at it, you don't have that overhead. It's on them. You're not paying fuel for those vehicles that those contractors are running, as opposed to paying all the fuel that you're paying on in your equipment. And overall, yes, you're paying them. I mean, I believe right now I'm paying my pickup trucks north of $80 an hour in Northbridge. And I know Milford, I believe, is slightly more, depending on size of plow, size of vehicle, the size if you have loaders or bigger little trucks. I just think that you outsource as much of that as you can, and you keep your main force to do the bulk of the cleaning on the main roads, the sidewalks, the things you can't outsource out. I mean, right now Milford outsources just about all the large school parking lots. I know I see all the Afonso trucks out there doing the high school. I don't believe Stacy School's done with an in-house town loader. but the Woodland School, and I also believe the Brookside School gets subbed out to contractors. So Milford's already doing that, because I remember back when I worked there, we used to go down there and plow those after with the loaders in our trucks when I first started, and it was a huge hindrance. And they learned, and they ended up putting contractors at it, and that's my belief in it. And my belief in that over the last 5 years in Northbridge, 5 winters, I mean, granted this winter's been very forgiving so far, I've brought my per inch average to about, I'll say $7,500 to $8,000 per inch. Basically what that is you take the amount of inches, or the total snow and ice budget that I used that year, divide it by the inches, and you get the per inch amount. I did the same math for Milford over the last 5 years, and it was at $14,888 per inch. Not an exact science, but that's about where Milford was at in the same, the same span that I was doing the same thing in Northbridge. So I think we throw more contractors at it, and like I said before, if you put 20 guys doing the job and it only takes 10 hours, or 10 guys at it and takes 20 hours, you're paying the same, but it's getting done quicker. And that is my belief, because you got to get people out to work, out to school, and a lot of that goes into the variables about the length of storms. But that is my belief, and that's how I've managed to keep down that cost per inch.
Let's stop there, and we'll talk about materials next. But Scotty, what's your opinion on how are we removing snow, and is there a better way?
I have a little different belief, believe it or not. I would like to lessen the amount of contractors. I feel we have good contractors and we have average contractors. The work the actual highway department can do on their own, we can plow the whole town. We can salt the whole town. We can do it. It's always a time thing. You can't do it if you've got to get the schools open. You cannot plow the amount of schools we have and the amount of parking lots we have. We can't do that, and that's why we hire equipment. But when it comes to the roads, we are capable of doing it ourselves, believe it or not. But it's a time thing. If you want to get up and go to work in the morning and you want to drive to work safe, we have contractors. The contractors that, like I said, I guess I'm going the wrong direction with this, but I would rather see it done in-house, my personal opinion. I think it's done more efficient, quicker, all around better job, and it's less work from the inside than following around 65
Now,
contractors.
I can see the point of we're better off doing it ourselves, but I got to get to work. I mean,
Well,
you can't
so
tell
that-
me we'll do it ourselves, John Perry will get out there, but it's going to be next Tuesday before we plow.
No. So what I'm getting at is when we purchase equipment, like we just bought another front end loader, it's got a wing plow on it. That is going to take the place of 3 contractors. 3 contracted trucks at $80 an hour. So right there is savings. And it will do it as just as efficient and fast, if not better, and cleaner with less damage because it's in-house. And we pay a lot of part-time drivers. So we have a part-time driver driving a town piece of equipment. It doesn't cost us a lot of money, way less money than hiring a contractor. You'll always need contractors, and that's what I'm getting at with the schools. It's just such an operation to clean the schools. We have one company that does the whole thing. They basically bring any equipment we ask, they do what they need to do, they take care of it. They actually have a foreman that takes care of it. We don't really have to deal with them. And that's to get schools open, because we want schools open. If we have a storm at 12 o'clock at night and we know it's going to stop snowing at 3, we want those schools cleaned. We want to make sure we can have school. That's a priority in a snowstorm, just as much as the streets and the sidewalks. But I see it as, we have started using other departments' equipment, loaders, pickup trucks, 1-tons, and their employees. And I'd like to see more of that. I would like to see, if we ever did have the water company, or, use all that equipment for the town, because those are employees that work for the town anyways. Overall, it would save so much more money. The amount of, as Jamie said, the actual amount of money it costs per inch is, it changes every year. You get ice storm after ice storm after ice storm, it gets way more expensive. We like to be in the $10,000, $11,000 range with 120 miles of roads. That's not bad. And all the parking lots and schools we have, it's a large operation. 65 outside contractors. I think we got almost 32 pieces of equipment of our own on the road, and all those employees and part-time employees. It's very hard to get all that, and do it cheaply. It's very, very difficult. And we don't use a lot of sand anymore, and that's a stormwater thing
Okay,
again.
let's start there.
So,
Materials, because over the years, I've heard brine, calcium chloride, sodium chloride. I mean, I've heard half a
Potassium.
dozen potassium chloride. It's like, okay, all the chloride families we've gone through. But talk to me about materials we use, because didn't we just buy a big 18-wheel, I don't want to call it a dump truck, but
Tractor trailer.
a tractor trailer, big bathtub, so
Yeah.
we could haul salt.
yeah, so we do belong to a salt consortium with the town of Framingham, 9 other towns, and we get our salt bid every year, but we've taken it a step further. So we bought a tractor trailer a couple of years ago at no more money than it would have cost us to buy a 6-wheeler. It was basically the same money. And the truck is set up to plow, it's set up for a sander, it's all set up to do that work. But we use it to haul salt for 2 reasons. Number one, it knocks $7 to $10 a ton off the price. I think we're paying $47, just short of $47.
Do we buy a
this
ton
year.
of salt?
Oh, ton? 5,000 to 7,000 a year.
5,000 to 7,000 tons.
Yes.
I mean, I ask that because if you were to ask people, well, a ton of salt must be able to cover Milford, Framingham, and
Do your
half the...
walkway.
That's a driveway.
So we use a lot of it, so we bought the truck. So we figured if we could save $7,000 to $10,000 a ton to haul our own salt and have the availability of our own salt. This is the way it works. Mass DOT, number one, they get their salt after a storm before anybody. And until they're done and their sheds are full, we don't get anything. So we could wait 2 or 3 days sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's 3 trucks a day. It's not enough to fill our shed. And if you get back-to-back storms, we'd be, we're out of salt. It's happened. So we haul our own. We can do 4 loads a day and save, you take the fuel out. The fuel's not too bad, but we can save thousands and thousands of dollars. I think we've been doing it for 2 years. We're at about $55,000 right now already in savings with that truck. And the
How
availability
much should we
of the
pay
salt,
for that big bathtub?
$180,000,
So in 2 years, we're already...
$50,000. I don't know where we're at this year.
But
not
we're already a
doing
fourth
lot
of it
this year.
paid back.
Fortunately, it's not snowing. We're not really doing much this year. But we've actually been able to haul all our salt this year because there's no rush. So, a guy goes and does 4 loads a day, and we save about $300 a truckload. So that's been great. It's been great for all our materials. Now we're hauling a lot of our spoil materials we dig out of the road. We're hauling those directly to Kimball Sand. So we don't have to bury it. We don't have to fill our landfill anymore, and there's no charge to dump it there. So we can get those materials out of here. We don't need them hanging around. We do have materials that hang around, and we process that and make our own gravel out of it, but we can only do so much. We only have so much space. So we do use on-board liquid sprayers on our trucks. Some towns buy treated salt already. It's more money. My thought on that is if you're going to buy treated salt and it's 32 degrees out, you don't need treated salt. So you wasted your money. We can shut our sprayers off and we don't need to use the liquid because it comes at a price also. So between that, trucks are calibrated. We do all we can to save on material salt. We don't use sand that much, very rare. So sand is obviously cheaper than salt, but it's also bad for the environment. So when you put sand down, basically you're collecting phosphorus. Back to stormwater. We have to sweep that. We have to clean that. That has to be trucked away. It has to be trucked to a landfill. We have to pay tipping fees for that landfill. Spending $40,000, $50,000 a year just to remove the sand we put on the roads. So, that's all stuff that's changed over the years. So we have cut back on sand rather, but salt also not good for the environment. So it's make it or break it, I
Jamie,
guess.
materials.
Material sand at this rate right now is about $12 a ton because, like Scott said, it's not heavily encouraged anymore. But when you get a little bit of ice out there, you still have to put a little grit because all the salt in the world isn't going to help in that situation, as we've all known as you're walking down your walkway. But as far as material myself, I believe the exact opposite. I'm part of a much larger salt consortium that has 18 towns in it. So you have buying a much larger bulk product through those amount of towns. And right now I'm spending $47.45 per ton delivered to my shop. we're in the consortium we're in, once again, has time constraints on it. So basically, if I order 300 tons of salt on a Monday, by Wednesday, Thursday, it's there. And my salt shed currently only holds maybe a storm and a half. It's a very small salt shed. So as soon as the snow starts flying, I have to order salt right then and there, knowing that those first trucks that roll out come my way, because if not, I'd have a real problem. And over 5 years, it's worked out. I know if I go and haul that salt myself under that same contract, it drops down to $47 a ton. So 45 more cents, I'm not paying fuel, I'm not paying an employee, because now my employees are out doing other things on snow removal and cleaning up, or dealing with machinery and everything that I'm sure Scott's employees are dealing with that they don't have time to deal with. So I'm not pulling out of my workforce. And to be honest with you, I mean, 4 loads a day from Boston, that must be one good direct route, because I don't know too many people that can get from Milford to Boston 4 times a day in a tractor trailer loaded and dumped within 8 hours, but.
Well, I can
So-
I'll answer to that. That's because we go to Quincy, we don't go to Boston.
Well,
it's a
it's
straight
pretty
shot.
close.
It's 4 loads a day.
Pretty close.
Okay.
And the price is not $47 a ton, it's 47 minus the $7 to $10. It's different every year, but it's less than $47.
Well, see, on my
a ton.
contract, it's $47.45 delivered, or $47 picked up. That would be if I sent my trucks out there, which I've had to do in the past. Like Scott said, there was a situation back in the winter of 2014, 2015, when they pulled all the salt trucks off. They used them to haul salt in Boston, haul snow in Boston, Worcester. Remember when all the rails went down and everything, the MBTA, they pulled everybody out. So in that situation, we had a problem. What I ended up doing was going out to a trucking company that they gave us 3 or 4 trailers. They sent their tractors out there, and then we paid the pickup price. So that was when we got to experiment with the picked up price, which was, I think at the time, was a little more than $47 an hour. But
Okay. One of the things that people, again, don't understand is how you pick the roads. People sometimes believe you have a map of the town, throw the dart, and where it lands, we do that road. Now, just for you, you start this question.
Okay.
How do you pick the roads you're going to do?
Well, we have started a asset management plan. That's a great help in picking roads, because we can see on a map what needs to be done and where it needs to be done. We can look at pictures of the roads that are on our system. But all that being said, at the end of the day, it's usually controlled by utility. So gas company, water company, sewer department, even electric companies involved. Gas company has a lot of work to do in Milford. So any road we're gonna do, that's our first stop. Gas company, what do you need to do? Tell us what you need to do on this road before we tear it up, because we want it done ahead of time. So that controls a lot of the roads. You know, it would be great if it was, you know, worst comes first or whatever, but it's just not possible. Some of the past roads we did this summer, in fact, we're working on roads now with a gas company. They're actually working now because the weather's so nice, so we can do these roads this summer. So that's number one. And obviously cost, it's a puzzle. Milford gets almost $1.5 million to do roads. We have to fit that in. We got to figure, if we do Cedar Street at almost $1 million, what are we going to do? How else are we going to do other roads? And we did 109 last year, and that could have been $1 million road. We chose to do a different process on it, saved a lot of money, and we're able to do other roads. But again, right now I'm working with the gas company to actually decide what's going to happen this year.
So you're looking at what the gas company is going to rip up.
Basically.
I mean, no use in doing XYZ Street if this summer they're going to tear it apart.
Right, and they're very good with that. They will give us plans. We will sit down and talk. We have a meeting every time they come to town. We have to discuss this. That's mandatory to me. They need to talk about what we're doing, because I do not want them coming back 2 years and saying, "Oh, we got to dig that road. We got to do the gas main." So we have a lot of contact, and the water company also. They're involved in it. So we want all that stuff done, and then we can go in and do the road. And if there's situations that we can't, and they know they need to do a main, we'll push them off as long as we can. But then their final repair on the road is pretty substantial.
Now, do they pay for that? If they come in and say, I'm going to rip up Water Street. Now, we just did Water Street a few years ago. For whatever reason, they have to rip up Water Street. Who pays for that?
They pay for it.
Oh.
Now, we get them to pave as much as we possibly can. If it's a minor repairs, then we can't make them repave the road. But as long as it's not within our moratorium, we have a 2-year moratorium bylaw. So we will not let them touch it any time then. I'll give you an example, Main Street, from Water Street to Hopedale. I mean, that road's a mess, but it's the pre-work to a huge project that we're doing. We have a $2.5 million project. We're gonna be doing that road starting April 1st. So the gas company's been there for years. They've been there 2 years working. They did every service, 2 gas mains, and every side street connection. It took them 2 years to do that. So that's why that road's such a mess right now. And the thing is, it's coming up on the time to get it done. It was actually supposed to be started in the fall, but they pushed it off till the spring. But the project's ready to go. It's a tip project that I started 5 years ago. It's been a 5-year creation. So that project was based on the gas. The other thing it was based on is the culvert. There was a culvert crossing on that road that we had to think about before we could do this project. That culvert had to be fixed, the Godfrey Brook culvert. Huge culvert, and it was falling down. I mean, you walk under it was actually granite posts holding the road up. A scary scene. I mean, it was. So we had originally added that to the TIP project. But the TIP project was up around $4 million, and I went to a lot of meetings in Boston. We discussed this, we talked about it over and over, and it was so much money that they kind of fell back on it. So we managed to get a grant, a FEMA grant, to do that culvert. It was $1 million culvert. We got the grant, we got that done. Now that opened up the road for the gas company to do their work. Now they could work around the culvert, go under it. They put their pipes in when we did the actual culvert, so they were ready to go. So now, starting in the spring, that road's ready to go. It will be torn up, redone. The intersection of 140 will be all rebuilt, all new lights, bike lanes, the whole works. So basically, it has to do with the utilities. That's 90% of it.
Dartboard or plan?
Well, it's a little bit of both, actually, and I will say, dealing with the TIP project, we just finished an $8 million TIP project in Northbridge on Sutton Street, and it was complete sewer, water, the whole nine, land takings, widening the roads, sidewalks. It was quite an undertaking.
TIP project?
Traffic Improvement Program project. It's funded by the state. There's grants available, there's matching funds you have to put in X amount of dollars, for engineering and all that before you get approved. A lot of pre-planning goes to the state, you get on a list. They like the ones that are shovel ready, so the more planning you do beforehand, you go. But as far as the planning on roads, I'm in constant contact every year, January. I have a representative from Eversource. We sit down and talk about what they're planning for the next 2-3 years. That way I can coordinate what I'm doing. They ask me what I'm doing, vice versa, so we sit down and plan it. As far as how I run my road repair programs is, if Eversource was to come in like they're doing, I believe it's West Spruce Street right now and Pleasant Street and a few other areas down in there, they're putting in a gas line. We have a 5-year moratorium, so you have to plan a little more deeply, except for emergencies, because it never fails. As soon as you pave a road, there's a gas break at a junction or a water break. It never, ever fails. In that case, they come back, and we're very tight on what they do, depending on how far they have to cut. If they have to go full width of the road, curb to curb, or half lane, center line to curb, they have to put it in, come back again, infrared it, so that way it comes up to what it looked like prior to, as close as you could get. But when they go in and do, water work, gas work, or any of that, I have that sit over the winter, because there is nothing worse, and everybody's seen it, when you go in, they do a utility, you go pave that road brand new that same year, all those trenches settle, all that compaction goes down. Within 2 years, all of a sudden, now you got this where the trench used to be, and you see that crack, and it's a constant reminder of where that work was done. So like last year, they did a couple areas in Northbridge in the gas line. So it was a water line on Prospect Street and a couple other areas. Right now, the poor people are dealing with the headache because we had them pave it, bring it up to grade, but it's just a rough pavement. Now they come back in the spring. We're planning on doing sections of that road this year. We go with them and say, okay, depending on all your laterals and how wide your work was, once again, it's either curb to curb or, half road width, depending on where it is. But I look at it now, everything is settled and gone. But there is a lot of planning, because you have to deal with the water company, you have to deal with the sewer department, you have to deal with the gas company, especially now with gas company, because that's a very significant hot button issue. You want to make sure you don't hold them up for anything. So that's pretty much the way we choose our roads. We try and do the worst first, and sometimes over the winter, certain roads you didn't think would fail, and you have to address those. It's just, it has to be done.
Now, Chapter 90 money, it's what the state gives you to maintain your roads. Is that an accurate? Milford has always said, doesn't seem like enough. So we kick in another $500,000. I think it's still $500,000. If you had extra money, Santa Claus showed up and gave you another $500,000 or $1 million, what would you do with it?
Fix roads, of course. Well, roads and sidewalks, the roads and sidewalks. Some parts of town, the sidewalks in this need a lot of help. It costs money. You know, we now have started a Complete Streets program that gives us another $400,000 towards sidewalks is mainly what we're going to use it for. But in whatever projects the public thinks are, you know, worthwhile for us to do, because part of the Complete Street projects is public outreach and you know, feeling out the public for what they think wants to be done. So we're in the middle of that now. That's another $400,000 that we can get towards roads. But anything the town could kick in, obviously, you know, we're looking at doing Cedar Street now, and that could be $1 million project. We try to do the most efficient thing possible to a road. 109, for example, we did cold in place recycling, a 9-inch thick road. You know, there was no reason to do a full depth reclamation, but yet the cracking and the stuff that was happening to the road, you know, we had to do something. And we decided a different project. So it went from a $1 million reclamation project to a $400,000 cold in place project. Very, very high-end operation, done in 2 weeks, complete. It absolutely worked out great, and so far so good. It's been 2 years, and we're seeing nothing that's bothering us. There's no cracking, there's no separating, there's no shrinkage. It's actually worked out well. So, you know, part of doing the roads in trying not to spend all the money is the process you do to the road. It's not about rebuilding every road. It's about pavement preservation at the end of the day. You want your pavement to last as long as you possibly can. And there's hundreds of different processes to do that. Number one, crack sealing.
But I'm
Crack
going to have
sealing
to stop you because we're not going to have enough time. If you had the magic wand and had extra money, where would you put it?
I would put it into roads as well. I look at it a little differently. I'm happy to see Milford's part of getting into the Complete Streets program right now. It's a great opportunity where you can get funding for up to $400,000. We did this a few years ago in Northbridge. Milford currently is a Tier 1 community. Northbridge is a Tier 3. We've done all the investigations and that stuff few years back, so we're already looking at projects already, which it's a great program that can get you some significant funding, but there's a lot of competition now. But $1 million, my biggest thing right now, Milford is driven on the tax base, which we have, which is the commercial tax base. If I had $1 million, I would go in and completely rip out Fortune Boulevard, new sidewalks, new roads, because the amount of money that those hotels and those businesses bring drive this community.
1 minute. Jamie, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
1 minute, well, I would say that I would like to bring back to Milford the availability and accountability that the taxpayers in Milford deserve. I'm a hands-on guy. I would be there to answer anybody's questions, anybody's phone calls, and I'm committed to this town. My family's been in this town for 3 generations. I plan to live the rest of my life in this town, and I want to bring back everything I have learned in other communities and bring it back to Milford and put it to a greater use.
Scotty,
Well,
I'm
again,
from Milford.
yeah.
Why should I vote for you?
Again, my commitment, my experience, the amount of money that I've been able to save this town in 13 years is in the millions. Between grants, tip projects, and over, it's millions and millions of dollars in FEMA projects and FEMA hazard mitigation grants and 319 grants. And, you know, accountability is number one, obviously, and safety for our residents is number one. So if you can do that, offer the services and save the amount of money I've been able to do over these last 13 years, then, you know, it's a great thing. It's a great thing for me. It's a great thing for the town.
Well, as we always say, I won't ask you to vote for any specific candidate. I will beg you to get out and vote and hope that you have an educated vote, that you get to know these 2 candidates, and you pick the one that you think best represents your ideas and will lead the town forward in the manner you feel most comfortable with. So as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, and may tomorrow be a safer travel day than today. Good night.
too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just